Hey all, today we're going to do a little bit more of a deep dive into audience analysis. And this really involves identifying the audience and adapting a speech to their interest, level of understanding, attitudes, and beliefs. We really want to take an audience centered approach and remember that we don't speak for ourselves, but for our audience. Now, to do this, there's a couple of great ways to do it. We can think about analyze the audience, understand the audience, the demographics, the interests, the environment, the needs, the customs, customizing it, and expectations. So let's break this down a little bit more. So first of all, the first thing we want to think about is our audience. We think about who they are. Is this our peers, like for example, in this classroom, or is it coworkers? Are we talking to subordinates or clients, or are they going to be students? Are they younger than us or older than us traditionally? We want to think about all these things. Also think about what knowledge the audience has on the topic. I mean, for example, if you start talking about something that the audience already understands and we're underestimating their knowledge and we're like, well, good morning, class. Today we're going to talk about making a peanut butter sandwich. And to do that, you're going to need to get loaves of bread. So if you don't know where bread is, go ahead and ask your mom, right? That would be kind of ridiculous, especially at this level of class. On the other hand, if we were to Zoom bomb into a physics PhD class at Berkeley, we might get a little bit blown away. Maybe something like what happens when we miss a day of school and everybody moves ahead. Kind of like, well,
Formation. Here too, diagram by connecting the various points HIGK, PEGQ, and LMNO, creating our geometric configurations, which have no properties but with location. R equal to the described triangle CAB quintuplicated. Therefore, it is also the five triangles composing the aforementioned NIGH, each are equal to the triangle CAB in this geometric concept. Therefore, in a like manner, the geometric metaphors can derive a repeated vectoral sum. This was your assignment, and I would like to see the results. Please, take them out. Oops.
I don't know about you, but I had several moments like that in high school. I'd miss a day or two, heck, got mono once, came back, had no idea what anybody was talking about. What happens to our listening when we're lost in the conversation? Well, we stop listening. There's no point in trying to understand if we aren't going to. So think about what your audience might know and remember what you know may not be what they know. We like to pass around this idea of common knowledge, right? Common knowledge, it's a little bit of a misnomer. Common knowledge is something known by most people, something known as a mutual knowledge in a group of people. However, not all people know the same things, especially when it comes to cultural understandings. For example, at home, you may take off your shoes when you walk in the door. But what happens if you go to somebody else's house and you start taking off their shoes, but that's not what they do in their house? Suddenly it seems like a very weird act, and vice versa. Somebody traipses through your house with their shoes on, you're like, what are you doing? Isn't it common knowledge you take off your shoes? So we really have to think about what common knowledge is. A big one I always like to point out is that dogs can only see in black and white. Well, that's not true. In fact, dogs can see a tricolor. They don't see quite as vividly as us, but they do see some color. One that I used to hear a lot is that embassies are on United soil. United States soil. That's not at all what it is. It's just a legal jargon that says what happens at an embassy will be investigated by the United States. However, not all embassies fall under this rule. A big one I used to hear a lot is that police couldn't lie to you. And so you'd have the bad guy ask the cop, the undercover cop, are you a cop? You're going to have to tell me if you are. Yeah, they can lie to you. So don't even bother with that one. But this is a lot of stuff that people know, but isn't really true. Another thing that we should think about with our audience is the age. Well, in our class, it's probably around 17 to maybe late 20s. It kind of depends on what's going on that particular semester. Education, they're probably all graduated from high school, moving on to some college work. We probably have some people who are returning from college to college after maybe already getting their BA or their BS. Income, that can range very greatly here in the Bay Area. And you can think about their background, right? Maybe something cultural, you can think about their background, or perhaps you can think about maybe are they an athlete? Things like that could help you craft your speech a little bit better. And that's ultimately what we want to do. We want to make sure that our audience is interested in this topic. And that does not mean that we have to choose a topic that is interesting to the audience, but we need to make that topic interesting to the audience, if that makes sense. It's kind of a little subtle. We want to do that through, of course, the audience connection on the outline, that with them, what's in it for me, right? So you might think about the audience's attitude towards your message. For example, in California, if we were to do a topic on, let's say, gun control, you might get a little bit of a positive message towards that topic. But if I were to talk about gun control in some place like Mississippi, where a lot of people are taught about guns very young, and there's a lot of cultural attitudes towards guns, well, they might have a very negative attitude towards that topic. So think about what their concerns might be. You also want to think about stuff like, where are you giving your speech? Are you giving it on Zoom? If you're giving it on Zoom, think about the lighting in your room. What's going to be behind you, right? Where are you going to be in your house? If you're going to be in a classroom or an auditorium, are you going to need to speak much louder to let that last row hear you? Or are you going to be outdoors on a stage where people might be walking by and not have anything to do with your speech as they rollerblade in the park or something like that? And you're going to have to really keep your audience's attention and make sure that the environment and your speech are suitable to each other. Now, every speech in the entire world has a limited amount of time, whether it's 3 minutes for our first speech or up to 9 minutes for our last one. I want you to focus on what the audience needs. What do they need to know? I had a student a few years ago do a speech for their informative on net neutrality, but not when he talked to his other students, not a lot of them knew what net neutrality was. So he had to make sure that he described and explained what that was before he went into the laws that were going to be affecting it. So you might think about customizing your message. Think about, identify who you're trying to reach. Other students, clients, your superiors at work. Identify what motivates each of your audience. Heck, with students, sometimes it's just entertainment. We want to be entertained, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Or it could be that they are very environmentally motivated, or maybe they're very profit motivated in the cases of if you're at work, right? Or saving money if it's customers or clients. And you can adapt your message to suit them, although there is a larger question on how much you ever want to adapt your core message to suit an audience. And we'll talk about that when we get to ethics. And then finally, there's the audience expectations. When people become audience members in a speech situation, they bring with them expectations about the occasion, about the topic, and about the speaker. And violating audience expectations can have a negative impact on the effectiveness. For example, occasion expectation. A perfect example of this might be a wedding, or it could be a funeral. Think about this. At Nipsey Hussle's funeral, there were something like 800 people showed up. You had policemen, you had firemen, you had politicians, you had gang members, you had businessmen, you had entertainment people show up. I mean, it was a huge affair. Now imagine one of those politicians goes up to talk at Nipsey Hussle's funeral, and then in the middle of his speech, he starts to give his re-election campaign speech. How would you feel as an audience member at somebody that you admire, that you love perhaps, and somebody is talking about how you should elect them again? That might feel really gross, right? There could be a topic expectation. Think about where we might expect a specific topic. A lot of times the speeches on campus, there's a specific topic. It could be, hey, come to this transfer seminar, and we're going to teach you how to transfer to a four-year university. Or even honestly, your college classes. Could you imagine you're an accounting major, you show up for accounting 101, and suddenly, oh, I don't know, they start talking about conspiracy theories. This actually happened several years ago. It was an English teacher who was promoting the QAnon conspiracy theory during class hours and not following really the course objectives. Rather than I following that, he's talking about, well, a cabal of satanic, cannibalistic pedophiles who run the world. That's actually what the conspiracy theory is. So you can imagine you're sitting there in this class that's required for you to move on to your next class, and you're not learning anything. That can be so frustrating. And then finally, it's the speakers, right? We definitely have a bit of credibility that we put on our speakers. So, for example, if the school brought on somebody and they're supposed to be an expert, let's just say in cybersecurity, and then you find out that they are a basketball coach at a different school, that would feel really gross, right? Like you'd be like, why? What is the going on here? That's like a really gross feeling. There's other ways that a speaker could lose credibility, right? Lying, using poor information, telling you something about their background that's not true, and not giving you the type of speech that you expect. All of these things, they can leave an audience kind of feeling icky. That being said, sometimes, not always, but sometimes violating audience expectations can have a positive result. And a lot of times, this is where we take what the audience was expecting and maybe we change it. This is a city council meeting, city commission meeting in Springfield, Ohio. Back, I believe, last year. I'm not sure how many of you all were aware of it, but there was some controversy over the Haitian immigrants who are living in Springfield. And this is what this woman has to say about that. Let's check it out.
Oh, I love this woman.
I was born in Springfield and I've lived here most of my life. I can't believe these Haitian immigrants would come here and fill jobs that local Springfield residents would not or could not do.
This is it. Most people don't realize.
Now they've raised the average city wage for both Springfield and Clark County. They're paying income tax to the city that the city desperately needs for services.
Immigrants, including undocumented workers in the United States, where there is really good data, pay tax.
They're making some of the local losers look bad by their example. It's unbelievable. The Haitian immigrants are working overtime to save up money to buy up all the dilapidated, condemned, and boarded up homes in Springfield, then fixing those houses up to make them livable
There it is,
again.
gentrification of the houses.
This is raising property values
Raising property values.
across the city and county to the point where the valuation of all real estate in the city surpassed $1 billion last year for the first time ever. This in turn increases the property taxes paid to Clark County for those homes that are now no longer boarded up nuisances. I can't believe they're helping to fund our government and beautify our neighborhoods. These Haitian immigrants are now spending money in our community to where new restaurants and retail spaces keep opening up across the city. What absolute madness. Now we have new businesses in town generating more tax revenue for our city and county. I have a good paying job with great benefits, but because I have main character syndrome.
Because I have main character syndrome. Every time I hear her say that, it's just like, chef's kiss.
I want the exorbitant benefits that some of these Haitian immigrants get,
And the rest of the audience just laughing, smoking. Brilliant.
which is $292 per SNAP, aka food stamps, and $363 in cash per month for a single adult. Everyone knows that $655 per month lets you live like a millionaire in Springfield. I don't need it, but I want it before anyone else, because why should we help folks who have legally come to our country, but they have to wait for their work permit so they don't starve? Feeding the hungry in our community? This is lunacy.
I love this video. The video itself says a masterclass in satire. And I actually think it's cleverer than that, because the audience she's talking to, I don't know, would have got satire. But the way she listed off the tropes and stereotypes around immigrants, and at every stage showed the positive impact. Wonderful.
This is a great example of that satire, that changing the narratives. You're expecting them to zig, but all of a sudden they zag. And so that can be a great example of audience expectations, but it's a risk, y'all. I'm not going to lie. You got to know your audience. And I think she did, as you see the audience laughing. So what did we talk about? We talked about audience analysis. We talked about who are the recipients, what is their knowledge, what's their demographics, what's their interest, where are you going to be speaking, what information does your audience need, how can we adjust our message to meet our audience within reason, and what is our audience's expectations? Reach out with questions.